convention. When you think about Canada, you probably picture a first world, advanced country. GDP over $2 trillion US, strong welfare, high quality of life. Sounds like a dream, right? That's why so many people, especially from developing countries, dream of moving there. To study, to work, to start a better life. All good, until you talk to the people who actually live in Canada. According to a Ledger poll, almost half of Canadians live paycheck to paycheck. Many are even thinking about leaving the country. Yes, even immigrants. Some who just arrived already want out. Wait, what? You want to move to Canada while the people living there want to leave? What's going on? Well, that's the story we're diving into today. Because on paper, Canada looks rich, but in reality, it feels very different from what most non-Canadians think. Section 1. The origin. Well, we need to go back to the 2008 global financial crisis, where most countries got hit pretty hard, especially the US. And surprisingly, Canada actually came out pretty well this time. Why? Because Canadian banks were more cautious. They were better regulated and had fewer risky loans. After the crisis, economies around the world were in bad shape. People had no money to spend. Businesses had no money to operate. So central banks around the world stepped in by printing more money and slashing interest rates to make borrowing cheaper. Like everyone else, Canada's economy still needed support after the crash. But the problem was, while the US and the UK were dealing with collapsing banks and mass layoffs, Canada's economy wasn't hit nearly as hard. And yet, Canada took a similarly extreme path. Between 2007 and 2010, the Canadian Central Bank slashed the interest rate from over 4% down to just 0.25%. That's a massive drop. And for a country that was relatively stable, some experts argued that this was way too much. This gave Canadians access to super cheap debt, and they went all in on real estate. People started competing to buy homes, and prices skyrocketed. Demand soared. Supply couldn't keep up, because building homes takes time, permits, land, materials. You can't just press a button and pop out houses. And that's when the housing problems in Canada really started. So to put it simply, imagine this. After the 2008 crash, the US had full-blown kidney failure. They needed emergency dialysis just to survive. But Canada? Canada was just mildly dehydrated. It just needed to drink some water. Instead, it jumped into dialysis too. Healthy people don't need dialysis, but Canada signed up anyway. Section 2. Housing addiction. As we mentioned before, Canadians started to go crazy on real estate. Real estate has become Canada's biggest sector. Bigger than tech, bigger than manufacturing and production. And that's a big problem, because you can't export a condo. You can't build innovation on someone else's rising rent. While other countries invest in manufacturing and technology, Canada has heavily focused on real estate. That's why other fields like tech and manufacturing are falling behind. But it's not just a policy mistake, it's a mindset too. Especially with our parents telling us to buy a house because housing seems like a guaranteed investment. Prices keep rising, so people believe it'll never fail. Many even rely on home value as their main source of wealth. So in reality, they don't have cash, but they look rich on paper because their house's price is increasing like crazy each year. This belief helped inflate the market far beyond reason. Now, if we look at this chart, both the US and Canada had fast-growing housing markets in the 2000s, with prices rising much faster than salaries. But then came the 2008 crash. The US market got hit hard, especially the housing market, and prices dropped significantly, making homes more affordable again, even if just for a while. But what about Canada? As I mentioned earlier in Section 1, Canada didn't suffer a major crash. The economy stayed relatively stable. And because it wasn't hit as badly, so the home prices never reset. Things got even worse as prolonged low interest rates and rising demand kept pushing prices higher year after year. While wages barely moved, home prices just kept climbing. No pause, no reset, just straight to the moon. And this problem was worsened by investors too. In 2020, around 20 to 30% of houses were owned by investors, including real estate companies and small-scale landlords. These homes are used to make money. Some are rented out. Some are flipped, like bought cheap, renovated, and sold for profit. Others just sit there, waiting for prices to go even higher. Now, none of this is actually bad, but the problem is, when investors keep flipping homes without actually building new ones, prices start to take off. The supply stays the same, but demand keeps growing. Now, you might think, isn't this already normal? As in most countries, people can't afford to buy houses anymore? So what's so special about Canada? Well, even though Canada is not the only one, Canada is surely one of the worst. If we look at this graph, it's clear that Canadian house prices have risen the fastest, even beating Australia, the UK, and the US. And of course, we still haven't talked about the cost of living, which we will talk about in section 3. Crazy cost of living. Right now, people who are living in Canada's major cities or rural areas have the same problem, which is the crazy cost of living. Not only are the housing and rent prices ridiculously high, prices have gone up across the board, but wages haven't kept up. Having a full-time salary job doesn't guarantee stability anymore. In fact, for many Canadians, it's just not enough to survive. According to an RBC poll, almost half of Canadians now spend their entire income just on basic daily expenses. Nothing left over. And many have already dipped into their emergency funds or even their retirement just to survive. For example, in Toronto, the largest city in Canada, the median household income is around $97,000 a year, or about $8,000 per month before taxes. After taxes, that becomes around $6,500. As of May 2025, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is about $2,300. That leaves around $4,200 for everything else, like groceries, utilities, transport, insurance, and any surprises. For two people, this is already tight, and they need to live modestly. And if they have a child, even just one, the cost of childcare, milk, diapers, school, and extra food makes it not enough. That's also assuming nothing goes wrong. And since this is the median, that means half of people earn less than this, or have to spend more. So this explains why around 27% of Canadians are taking on debt to just cover monthly basic needs. Section 4. Over-immigration and loopholes. Ridiculous rent, crazy housing prices, and high cost of living have pushed people to have fewer kids. But at the same time, more Canadians are retiring. So who will work then if more people are retiring than being born? Well, that's the reason why Canada relies heavily on immigrants. The problem? Canada is doing it way too fast. In 2023 alone, Canada added 1.2 million new people. That's almost a 3.2% increase. If you think that's low, in that same year, Nigeria, one of the fastest growing populations in the world, only increased 2.5%. The difference is Nigeria's growth is natural, while Canada's was almost entirely from immigration. On paper, it looks great. More people, more spending, more GDP. But in real life, Canada's infrastructure is not prepared to keep up that increase. Schools are overcrowded, and hospitals are full of patients. Wait, how can this happen? It's caused by the government's policy mismatch. In 2024, the Canadian government welcomed 483,000 new immigrants, while in that same year, Canada only built around 245,000 new homes. These numbers might be enough if every 2 immigrants rent, or buy one house. But the problem was, these houses were meant for everyone, including citizens, current immigrants, and the new ones arriving. And we haven't even talked about the overstaying immigrants. From 2017 to 2024, there's estimated nearly 750,000 people that stayed in Canada after their visas expired. That means they're still staying in Canada illegally. And that number is a rough unofficial estimate. Could be less, or even far more. So this situation means the citizens, legal immigrants, and illegal immigrants are all competing for the same homes, healthcare, and resources like food, utilities, and other to live in. Even those who come legally, they still don't get the life they hoped for. Skilled immigrants who could be engineers, doctors, or any other specialists often end up driving Uber or doing more basic jobs. Disclaimer: I'm not saying these jobs are useless. Our society will collapse without them. But if these skilled immigrants can't use their talents, that's a massive waste of potential for Canada. So why does this happen? Because Canada still doesn't fully recognize foreign-trained professionals. They have to pass exams, which are good to ensure quality, even though expensive. And even after that, many get stuck in red tape, like limited residency spots that block them from working. And to make it worse, some employers ask for Canadian experience, which creates a trap. So it's like you need a Canadian job to get a Canadian job. Now you might think, why not just invite more wealthy immigrants, as they bring capital, doing investments, and businesses that will create more jobs, right? Well, things that happened in Vancouver, another major city in Canada's Pacific coast, tell a different story. Because of a wave of wealthy immigrants migrating to Vancouver, they buy up property and distort prices that were already high. Imagine the house's price is $500,000. And maybe there's an average Canadian who already saved $500,000 and wants to buy the house. And then a wealthy migrant comes and asks to buy for $550,000 to outbid the other buyer. Then another wealthy migrant comes and bids even higher to $600,000. And because they are wealthy, they can just keep bidding. Just keep increasing the offers. And voila! The average Canadian can't buy that house anymore. Vancouver housing prices have gotten so bad that one student, Tim Chen, went viral for commuting 1 hour by plane from Calgary to Vancouver just to attend his university class, because it was cheaper to pay $1,200 plane tickets per month rather than paying rent for $2,500 per month near his school in Vancouver. Sure, he only had 2 classes a week, but the fact that flying between provinces twice every week is somehow more affordable than living near your school, that means cooked. Another big problem is brain drain, that many Canadians and even immigrants started leaving the country for better opportunities, especially in the US and elsewhere. But in 2025, Canada got a bit of relief. Tensions with the US rose again due to the tariffs, which made things less friendly between the two countries. That halted some Canadians from moving south. Surprisingly, even some Americans have somehow started considering Canada as an option. So now, Canada has a real chance to turn its brain drain into brain gain. But if they waste this moment, who knows? Opportunities like this usually don't come twice. Section 5. Decline and the future. In 2014, another blow hit Canada, the global oil crash. Oil prices collapsed, and since oil was one of Canada's biggest exports, it hit Canada's income quite hard. Yeah, in case you don't know, Canada is rich in oil, especially in Alberta. After the crisis, instead of pivoting toward innovation or rebuilding its manufacturing base or strengthening the oil sector, Canada instead doubled down on what was already booming, which is the real estate. This caused Canada's oil export to fall. Car production fell too, dropping from 3 million vehicles in 1999 to just 1.4 million by 2020, almost half. If you've seen my GDP video, yeah, link in description, you'll know that everything you spend on final goods and services gets counted in GDP. So when Canadians spend money to rent these overpriced houses, that spending gets counted in Canada's GDP too. That's why Canada is richer on paper, while the people feel poorer. And not only that, high housing costs are also sucking money away from the economy. Now, Canadians need to save tons of money just to pay rent or buy a house, and let alone invest in research or innovation that can actually boost the real economy. And for young Canadians, it's starting to feel hopeless. Buying a home, starting a family, building savings, it all feels out of reach. So in conclusion, Canada's not collapsing or anything, but the cracks are getting wider. Housing prices are out of control. The cost of living is crushing people. Debt is piling up. Productivity is failing. And the systems meant to protect people are full of loopholes. Of course, Canada still has a chance to fix all this. Some efforts have already been planned or made, like building more homes and tightening immigration controls. But no one really knows if it's real change or just empty political talk. And